Welcome to A Corporate Time with Tom and Dan. I'm Tom.
I am Dan. Our producer Samantha's here. Hello, Sam.
Hi.
Any hoodie today? You're not wearing a hoodie.
I have it, just in case I get cold.
Yeah. I put mine on, but I realized that was a very bad move. But hey, welcome to the show, everybody. And we have a really, really big guest today. But any housekeeping first?
You can go to tomandan.com to sign up to become a BDM. Or we got a BDM only party coming up in March sometime. All the BDMs got an invite.
You should have gotten an invite. You should know exactly what's going on. If you don't, you can email me, dan@tomandan.com. I'll make it happen for you.
And the party's kind of set up like a wedding reception. We got Gringo's Catering.
Yes.
Free food, by the way. And then some bars set up. We got some live music. Angel is going to be DJing.
Yep.
We got Tony Rodriguez taking some photography, some wedding-style
Cat
pictures.
Ridgeway, right? And the Tourist will be playing.
Yep, 500 free gift bags with tons of gifts. Sport Subaru, Sport Mitsubishi, Bart Merrick, Streamline Mortgage Solution, ABC, Fine Wine and Spirits.
At-home floor store.
The Humidor, EMS Mobile Detailing.
And Danger Brain and Melissa Soroka.
Yeah, all sponsors throwing in gifts. So it's a free event and for BDMs only. If you sign up, you can go onto the app once you sign up and look at events, and it'll be all the information is there.
Now,
so
if you're not a BDM,
you're
you're going to have to sign up. tomandan.com/registration. That'll get you in. Okay, we got everything done. Now, I know you're super excited about this.
He's going to be at Porky's Comedy Club in St. Cloud on the 28th and 29th, Friday and Saturday. I'm sure you can go to porkyscomedyclub.com. What's the website? porkyscomedyclub.com and get your tickets.
Sam will grab the link and throw it in our Twitch chat room.
And you may recognize this gentleman from Family Ties, which
probably one of the most iconic shows of my entire existence.
Marc Price is in studio with us. How you doing, Marc?
Forgive me, I dressed for Florida.
You're dressed right. You're dressed right.
Sam, I got flip-flops on too. That's how I do business.
You're dressed correctly. I am not dressed correctly.
No, it's nipply out there. It's cold.
It's a little
hate
chilly.
it. I am as Florida gets, and I can't do it anymore. And we've been bouncing into the 40s, and I just can't do that.
So I came last season too, and it turns out I enjoy the beach more when it's really hot, when it's uncomfortably hot. That's when I enjoy the water.
When I like it.
So I'm coming back again. I don't know if it'll be hot enough by June, but I'm coming.
No, it'd be melt your face off. You'll think it's the end of the world.
And that's just June, because
summer.
August is the worst.
That's why I chose June.
That's
why I chose June.
August, you're easing into melting your face off. Like in August, there's not even any melting.
In August, we can't even swim in our pools because they're too hot. Like if this
Amoebas are growing in there.
Big ones too.
The sand at the beach melts and becomes glass.
Very slippery for sure.
But right now, you're experiencing Florida's winter, which is just every time a cold front comes, it gets cold for a couple days, hot again. That's our winter comes in spurts. Like every couple weeks, winter, then back to it'll be 85 Wednesday. No problem.
You were here yesterday, 88.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, 88's nice. You're dancing around 85, 88, somewhere around in there.
I love a lot of experience in the area. I've been coming here for years. Do you know that?
For many years. But I didn't know and I started digging in this morning a little bit more, and Samantha and I were talking about it, and I had no idea that you come from some pretty entertaining family too.
Well, all right, let's start with that.
If
My
that's
first
okay,
time,
yeah,
no, that's fine.
yeah.
My first time coming to Florida, I'll never forget it, was on tour with my dad.
Really?
That's nuts.
Yeah, my dad was a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, and a pretty big one at the time, right?
I'm proud to say, I don't know, I'm ashamed to say, I don't know, I followed in his footsteps. I don't know, we're both poor decision makers.
No, that's good though.
Stand-up comedy, there's no health care in that. I could have followed in his footsteps to be a lawyer or something.
Your dad,
I could have listened to my mother.
Al Burney. And
so your listeners don't know Al Burney. There's no chance. But he would be 100 if he were alive today. He had me really late. He was my age now when he had me, which, by the way, I'm so much more grateful than I ever was. Now that I'm my age, I would never have a kid now.
Right.
So you're like, oh my God.
I could not cope. I could not. My girlfriend has a 13-year-old. There is no chance. A baby? Are you kidding?
Yeah, I think I'm an old dad, and I'm 43, and I am an old dad, but man, it's rough.
How old is
your
your dad?
bones don't work as well.
He was 50 years old when he had me.
Wow.
And
awesome.
He was, grateful for that. And he was on the radio with Fred Allen, if you know who that is.
And your mom was a singer?
In those days, Jack Benny and Fred Allen, that was it. People would sit and watch the radio There was no TV.
Yeah.
Then as early TV came along, he was the host of an early show called the 54th Street Review, and he was on Ed Sullivan many times.
Yeah.
And his career is so, I can't even go over all the highlights. One of them that I love is that in 1964, he was on the first segregated show. Integrated show. Let's be clear. Sorry, integrated show, not segregated show.
Oh yeah.
They had
what an achievement.
They had segregation.
He's like, thank God. He's like, we got him out of here. I'm sorry.
No, that's it's our generation. We don't even know those words anymore. It's like, what the heck? But yeah, he was on the first integrated show in Alabama, and it was with Ray Charles and the Shirelles and
my
Johnny
God.
Mathis, and my dad was on the bill. There was a bomb scare. It was a big deal.
Wow.
You don't get any. You really don't get any bigger than some of the Motown names you're throwing out. I mean, that's insane.
Oh well, the who's who of my dad's work. My dad wrote with Lenny Bruce.
Jesus.
He helped Sammy Davis with impressions, and they were friends. George Burns and him were friends.
So
I think that's almost like the perfect
Don
career.
Rickles.
That's like the perfect career to have, right? Where you're successful and you're good at what you do, but then you kind of know everybody and you just kind of float and weave.
Well,
your
it was
way
all different
through
back
it.
then for comedians. There were only so many.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so my dad had been doing it for so long that a guy like Don Rickles was a kid by comparison.
Yeah.
To give you an
Wow.
idea, and in those days they knew each other. They all knew. You could count all the comedians that were headliners on your hands and toes. And boy, that saying everyone's a comedian.
Yeah.
That came true.
Yeah. Especially now, because back then it was like there was very few outlets for like the Ed Sullivan Show. Like that was about it. If you wanted to be a comedian on TV and do your act, it was like, well, you got this. That's it. Like no other avenue to get in front of people besides from live shows and doing the club scene. It's like, there was less media and
Talk about a growth industry.
yeah. And
So
now
they'd
it's,
roll over. They'd all be rolling over. I remember in the early 80s and in the 90s, my dad couldn't believe all the comics then. Now it's exponentially gotten nuts. Now everyone is a comedian.
Oh, yeah.
And what's funny is I've seen it go downhill in terms of the perception too. Like when I used to go on a plane, my first time coming to Orlando, I'd sit next to somebody, I'm a stand-up comedian. Oh, really? Wow. Yeah. That's impressive. Now I go, I'm a comedian. They go, oh, I have a cousin who's a comedian. He works at Best Buy.
Yeah.
It's like a podcast.
Yeah, we get it with podcasting.
Can I buy a soda?
Yeah, because we started this 10 years ago. So when we say it now, people are like,
podcast.
like 5 years ago.
Oh, you were one of the first podcasters. You're an early podcaster.
Even then, there was a lot, but still
09,
not.
nobody was really doing it, and we started in 09. And then, like when you're sitting on like 2012, when you told people, they were like, "Oh, that's kind of cool. Tell me about it." But now you say it, and everybody's like, "Yeah, my mom has one about knitting. And it's crushing. It does so well." And I'm like, "Oh,
that's why you become a comedian, to be an outsider, to not join the club."
Right.
I got to get out. I'm sorry, there's too many.
But you're good at it.
Unfortunately, I don't have any other skill set.
If someone tells me they're a plumber, I'm like, what? Wow! Because
you can make money,
rare.
you get health care.
I met a guy. Well, the guy that did our chairs. I'm like, what do you do? I upholster. I'm like, what? A trade? I was like, you're a unicorn. Look at that guy. You actually put cloth on chairs?
So, Mark, like show business was in your blood, and did you always know and always want to be not only a comedian but in show business?
You mentioned, I think my mom was a singer.
Yeah.
So that was part of it too. So they used to bring me out on stage when I was a little
dope.
baby. I was a cheap device for applause.
Yeah.
And you get hooked, but my mom hated show business.
Really?
Oh yeah, she hated my dad. She hated show business. She hated everything about it, and so she got out and she became a cop. My mom, growing up, was a cop.
Really? Yeah. Wow. Your dad really made her mad. And I feel bad for all the people she pulled over because that anger's.
It makes you think.
I feel bad for me.
Did Dad become the human embodiment of entertainment? And she's like, I got to go in a complete 180, right?
Did she hate it because I'm sure your dad was always gone, right?
It wasn't because of my dad as much as it was just how she was treated. A woman in show business in the late 60s, early 70s. A woman in life in the late 60s. Sure. That was the Mad Men generation.
Yeah.
This was pre-hashtag Me Too.
No,
this was hashtag Show Us Your Hoo-Hoo.
Yeah.
And so people were rude to her and stuff, and that's why she didn't like it. And they didn't treat her well. She didn't get paid right. And she'd go do a show, and all the men would get dinner, and they wouldn't feed her, and all that stuff.
Literally, everybody was Weinstein. Like everybody in the whole industry.
It's gross. It's gross,
Weinstein, I think, came out of that the entertainment generation of that's what it was, a super misogynistic
boys club. Yeah,
really.
They drank at lunch.
Yeah. everybody was
Well, let's not
drunk
get crazy. That's
and,
kind of fun.
All right.
Yeah, I like this.
So she just wanted out, and so she went to the totally different direction. She wanted, in fairness to her, for what she wanted for me, she wanted the great life for me. She wanted me to go to Cornell. She had it all mapped out. I was going to go to Cornell. I was going to have a family. As it is, I never went that way. I never finished 7th grade. I went my dad's direction.
Really?
I've never been married. I've never had kids. That's why I still have all my hair.
Yeah.
And you're happy.
Yeah,
oh my God.
And
you're happy.
And I remember touring with my dad in the 70s. We'd come to Florida, and they have all the villages and all.
Oh,
those,
sure, yeah.
But even then, they had stuff like that, hell, all of South Beach was old people.
Right. Yeah.
That was pre nightclubs and all that.
100%.
Pre-cocaine, everybody down here was old. Seriously. And when the cocaine started coming in, it's like, I'll go to Miami. Yeah, it wasn't.
You're right.
The cocaine era built Miami into this, it's the happening. But before that, it was just Naples. It was old people coming down here.
All old people.
Because their bones are cold. Seriously.
Yeah. Speaking of which, why do you think I'm putting my hoodie on? Cold. We need some cocaine up in here.
I was watching the history of food on the Food Network or something like that, and they said or maybe it was History Channel, I don't know. They said they used to put cocaine in Coca-Cola. Did you know that?
They did.
They put cocaine in Coca-Cola, and
did.
then they took it out, and what came next? The Depression.
Yeah. It's just a micro dose of. I'll do that with amphetamines now.
That's what you're on right now.
Anyway, so let's go fast forward to when you first started actually acting and getting into roles, because was Family Ties your first? Did you do commercials before that?
I did a few things. I was on Archie Bunker's place. I got to pick on Archie, sit in his chair, and all that stuff. I played a friend of the little girl on the show.
That's pretty cool, though, to even say that phrase.
It's just iconic.
Yeah.
I had a great line. They wrote me great lines too. So I was like, "Hey, Pop, what's your name?" I played a little comedian kid because that's what I was. I was a little Borscht Belt. I went to Merv Griffin when I was 14 as a comic. So here
the names are in. These are the biggest names, man.
Oh, you got millennials listening. They're going, "Who's Merv Griffin?"
Well, do your research, because
I've
always respected people more when they go backwards and learn about why do I like this band now? Probably because of the band 20 years ago.
Google the 70s out there. If you're younger, Google the 70s. Merv was the Ellen of the 70s.
Yeah, he was mega huge. But
and the 80s.
So you go on there as a little kid. How old?
14 years old.
That's nuts.
Crushed it. Pointed at the band when I came out. I'd been doing it a million years.
Yeah.
Had my little Jerry Seinfeld uniform on with the rolled up sleeves and the skinny tie
you
open.
Loved it, right?
So you had it. You loved it.
I loved it.
Yeah. Entertainer at heart. I
love that, man.
So they brought me into NBC, and everything sort of went from there. I did some of the other sitcoms and stuff, but then we came to Florida again, and I was maybe 18, 19 years old, and I was the host of Teen Win, Lose, or Draw on the Disney Channel.
Yep.
And all the big kid celebrities of the time, some have gone on to become very famous. Oh, great! I'm blanking on his name. What's the biggest?
And I watched you on the show
from the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Who's the biggest?
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio was a little kid on the show at the time.
Yeah.
So he came on, and Justin Timberlake was a Mickey Mouse Club kid member or whatever.
Wow.
And what was so funny, Britney Spears was too, but specifically with Justin Timberlake and Leo. Can I call him Leo?
Yeah.
You've met him.
I still know him. Yeah. Leonardo DiCaprio. No, there was a time when the two of those guys thought I was really cool because I was 19 and they were little nerd teenagers.
And you were the host. There. You made it in their eyes.
I was getting laid. I had writers. They were like, look at that.
Yeah, this guy's killing it.
I wish those days. I want those days to return.
No, that's awesome though. I mean, you're kind of in a weird way, not in a weird way, in a very a patriarch kind of a tip of the hat. You're doing sort of what your dad did, right?
No doubt.
But you're knowing everybody.
We're following in his footsteps.
You're weaving your way kind of through the entertainment and doing a bunch of different things.
And we're not stopping. And that's the thing. My dad did not stop. He went until he could not perform ever again. I don't know if I'll be able to make it the distance. But
I think that's the way to do it, right?
For the moment.
That's the goal.
What other choice do we have? Again, no other skill sets.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Thank you, Dad.
Mark, back then,
could have taught me accounting, real estate investment. I could be flipping houses, anything.
Yeah. Too much work.
I could imagine that you're talking the 70s and being a child actor. I mean, you were.
I started in the 80s. I started performing
in the 80s. Okay,
80s, but the 70s I was with my dad. I was hanging out. I'd go on stage and introduce him or something, so you could call it I started. But really, it was the 80s that I moved to Hollywood and got into.
Well, you got comfortable with it.
Yeah. Even the 80s and 90s, it was just less information out there. And I assume, and you hear these stories of Drew Barrymore, and it's just once you got into that scene, there's basically treated kids as adults, and then like it was just like, all right,
I was an adult. I was legally an adult. I got emancipated.
Really?
That's where you go to court. You go to a judge.
You did that.
I did that.
Yeah,
I
Oh,
did that.
really?
Yeah.
No, why'd you do
Oh my
that?
God.
Well, okay, so for one, on the set, if you're under 18, they make you have a guardian, which you have to pay somebody to be there all week. And you don't really need one because everyone's around the set and stuff. You're not totally, So
Hey, you're 17 years old. Yeah,
certainly you don't need one when you're 17.
Of course,
but I
right.
was 15.
Okay.
But even so, you don't. Anyway, so we got out of that by just making me emancipated. We didn't have to pay a guy to sit there all week. That was one thing.
So yeah, it was
And then,
it was just a legal paperwork deal so that you didn't have to have. Some
Well, I
sort
took
of
it a little
supervisor.
further because the moment I signed that thing, that was legal adult. Then it all went to my head. I was like, "Hey, Dad, if you want to live under my roof."
Oh,
Damn, Mark.
so it was. See,
Oh
like,
my God.
So I moved out young. But my dad.
How
wasn't-
young?
I was 15 years old. Man.
And
I was
out on your own, that was
I
it?
had a roommate. And
Wow.
got
I
a
mean,
place.
That's insane.
I lived right by on the Sunset Strip, right by all the middle of the Roxy and the
Oh, yeah.
the whiskey and all that. I was 3 blocks from all that. Tower Records.
That's crazy.
I can't imagine. I mean, nowadays it's way more absurd. But even when I was 15 in the 90s, I couldn't take care of myself. Like I'm old enough to make.
Not only can I take care of myself, but I moved in with a group of comics, ill-advised by the way. I had very very poor role models growing
15?
up. From the Comedy Store, I was hanging out with all the comics from the Comedy Store, including guys that became very famous, like Sam Kinison and Jim Carrey. But they weren't famous yet. Nobody knew who they were.
Right.
Oh, they didn't party and do drugs.
No, not too much. And so I actually was the only one that could afford rent. Like I had the smallest bedroom, but I would pay more in rent than anybody else. They'd take advantage of me. I love it. Don't worry. I'm not complaining. But like one of them sold me his old Betamax. Like rent time, I was like, hey.
Because
it's
you
a great
had a-
video machine. It's Sony. It's really good.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
bought the beta, like right as VHS.
So you're taking trade for their share of the rent? Oh my God!
Because you
at 15,
you had a steady
money.
gig
you're
and
running
you
like
had money.
a makeshift comedy pawn
This is
shop.
insane. And you hear stories about like Pauly Shore hanging out with Kinison and all the crazy.
So
stuff
Pauly's dad was a comedian, like my dad.
Yeah.
And so Pauly and I met when we were babies in the Catskill Mountains and stuff, and I've known him all growing up and stuff. And yeah, he was covered. I used to get kicked out of the Comedy Store. He'd be smiling in the back as I got kicked out because he got the stay.
Yeah,
right?
family, yeah.
But then I went to the Westwood Comedy Store where Pauly flipped burgers. By the way, Pauly worked there.
Yeah, I've heard a story where his mom got him a job. That was his first job, where he'd be a cook at the
Westwood Comedy Store
yeah.
because they serve food there, which they never to this day they don't serve food. I don't think
At the regular,
Hollywood,
yeah.
But because they serve food there, it got some sort of liquor license, like a restaurant. Maybe they couldn't serve liquor. Maybe it was just beer and wine. But they served alcohol with food. You didn't have to be 21 to get in. You can get in any age.
like a restaurant, sure.
Yeah. And so that's where I started hanging out. And that's where all those guys were. At that point, they used to put Sam Kinison on last because he would scare everybody away.
Right.
When they wanted to close, they would put him on and everyone would leave. And the comics would sit in the back and laugh because everybody got scared. And it was every person that walked
flipping out
was like more funny, And then people used to come, rock stars and stuff come to hang. They heard about it. They would like hang out in the back and enjoy that.
Right.
And then more people were coming to see him than were actually walking out.
Yeah.
I watched that whole evolution. It was pretty cool.
That is crazy, and just to be around that whole scene at that time must have been nuts. And then what after that? Like, what do you think that growing up like that and being like put out into the world at 15, emancipated from your parents, you can now legally make an adult decisions, and now you're forced into, obviously probably hardened you really quick and made you an adult really quick, but also, I mean, do you think it was a good thing that happened to you, or a good decision, or do you think that maybe if I went a different route that
all right, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so every once in a while, I'll admit it, I sit there and I go, I should have listened to my mother. But in reality, there was no listening to anybody. It's destiny, and you can't fight it. You can steer it a little, and I think it's important. People work to steer their destiny.
Sure, yeah.
But you can't fight it.
Mm-hmm. And so
I like that.
After, where'd you go from there? As far as like,
all downhill.
no, just
Well, no, I mean,
It's
you're
tough
on-
when you peak when you're 17 years old.
Yeah, well, I mean, but that show, I mean, the popularity of Family Ties, which, the chat room's just exploding from people. It was funny because the first thing they did when you walked in, you're so recognizable. Like this camera on Tom right now will shoot a little cross-section of that hallway or the lobby. And as you walk by, somebody said, and we have not plugged this because we wanted it to be a surprise, and somebody goes, hey, is that Skippy from Family Ties?
Well, I've grown to cope with the moniker,
but
by the way.
Insane.
It doesn't bother me. People want it to bother me. Don't you hate being called Skippy? I'm like, no, it's my rapper name. I don't.
Yeah, it also means that you are highly successful. It also means that you did something that not a lot of people have done. But I just found it as a study, as a case study, I thought it was crazy that somebody could see your profile and go, I know exactly who that is.
More people watched. There was less TV.
If I'm on camera.
No,
you're fine. I mean, but you're right, Tom. I think it was at a time when more people were. It was like the only
You've
thing.
heard that being in front of the camera adds 10 pounds.
Right.
Okay, so it turns out not being in front of the camera for the last 3 decades added 50 pounds.
You're fine. You're fine. We're all there. We're all there.
I stopped drinking soda in New Year's. I've had 4 since New Year's. I cheated.
Hey,
4.
that's good.
Really?
I can't stop.
I do like 4 a day. I used to do 8
yeah.
a day. I was a soda fiend.
Where do you live, Mark?
A Coke addict.
Coca-Cola. Where's your full-time residence?
Los Angelino, same place
Really?
I've been since I'm 17 years old. I haven't moved.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
Yes.
And do you still live there because you
I love it there.
You
I
love it
it
there?
yeah.
Okay.
Now I will say Hollywood's getting a little much now. It's they dropped 5 cities on our city. That Sunset Strip place I was telling you about. There's big buildings everywhere now. There's no space anymore. Everyone's angry. Rents are so high. You're like, that sounds like Orlando.
A lot of angry people. Yeah.
A lot of angry people. But that's so it's maybe not the utopia it once was. But where I live, I've got a place in Laurel Canyon, where it's like the country and the
There you
city.
go.
So I get to escape, and I live where there's a lot of rock and roll history. I live where Jim Morrison used to live.
Yeah.
And the Byrds. I actually live right in the old where the Byrds lived.
Oh, really?
The rock
That's
group.
cool.
Yeah. I want to be a rock and roll star. You know that song? They wrote that there. and
Yeah,
everything.
And let's plug again Porky's
yeah.
Comedy Club. And when is it?
It's Friday and Saturday,
Friday.
28th and 29th. It's leap year.
Tonight,
We're doing
tomorrow.
February. No, tomorrow, Friday and Saturday.
This will come out Friday.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
Tonight and tomorrow.
yeah.
Tonight and tomorrow. Tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
Porky'sComedyClub.com.
Yes, sir.
To get your tickets. And Mark.
And Sam, just in case you don't know me, Google the 80s.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, no, she knows. She
Oh,
knows.
yeah.
Sam knows all.
She's a millennial.
She is.
She's a millennial.
Tom's a millennial.
Yeah, you're both millennials.
You're a millennial?
I'm the only
I'm
Gen
the
X.
last. 82 I was born. So
You're technically on the cutting edge.
I'm a
of
Gen
like,
X,
of
but
the-
I didn't have a cell phone until like 2001.
Me either.
So,
what?
So, I'm just saying, it's hard to imagine categorizing me as a millennial.
But you
when
watch
I-
Family Ties. I know that.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, I'm like 100%. That's in my wheelhouse of shows I watched.
Did
when I
you
was a kid.
watch Teen Pictionary or Win, Lose, or Draw? Or what,
I'm
what was
sure
it?
You had to have
I
the
did,
Disney
yeah.
Channel.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
wealthy was your family?
Yeah, I
That's
did.
true. You know
My
what's funny is
aunt had
I
the
don't-
Disney
I
Channel.
don't remember that, but I remember watching it, but I also know that it wasn't at my house, and you nailed it. I would have to go over to my friend David's house. My buddy David lives in L.A. now, where
when-
he has his own production company. I had to go to his house because they had the good cable. My dad would never pony up for premium cable. We always had basic, and he thought that was like, it's like, there's tons of channels.
Remember, like once a month they'd run a promotion where they give
Free.
it out for free,
Oh, right,
and they
right,
turn it
right,
on.
right.
I remember those times. They'd be
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, it's free this month." By the way, I'm gonna yell at my mom about how expensive could it have been. Like,
Oh, come on. It was pretty
No,
expensive.
was it?
I think
Have
it
Have you
was
checked your cable bill
comparatively-
lately?
Like,
Comparatively, it was
it
pretty expensive because I can remember
Was
my
it more
dad.
than $10 a month?
Oh yeah,
Oh, okay.
It was more than that because I also remember that they ran a thing one time. I never told my mom and dad this, so if they're listening to this, they don't care. I'm an old man now. With kids.
What are they going to do?
Be hard for
What are they
you
going to do?
I would literally freak out and write notes to my friends on notebook paper and let them know when the Playboy channel was doing their free.
Oh, so yeah.
Because they would open up the channel like for like 3 days on like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I'd be like, "That was like my mom." was
Versus
like,
watching the scramble.
right, exactly.
that
So
was always
suddenly
fun.
I was sick all weekend. I'm like, ugh, I'm like, had the flu.
My stepdad Steve got the descrambler boxes
Oh,
from his
yeah.
biker buddy.
Yeah.
Then we had those.
Fell off the truck.
Oh,
Sure.
yeah.
That's where it unscrambles.
Yeah. I had the Spice Channel. Remember that one?
Oh, Spice was good.
My friends.
It was an elevated Playboy.
From high school used to come over my house, and then when we would hang out and like drink beer in my backyard, like one of them would be missing. We're like, "Where's the wizard?" And then he'd be in my room
watching the Discrambler. Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it.
Anyway, well, Mark, thanks so much for coming in. I
Yeah,
appreciate
man,
it.
we really appreciate you coming in, man, and enjoy your time in Orlando. But I know you come here a lot. And any beaching? You gonna do any beaching it up?
Beach and let's just get a little weather for it.
Yeah, I know.
Next week I'm in all over the beach in Ormond.
Yeah,
and,
where's next? So you're doing Porky's, and then where do you go from there?
Flagler
Okay.
Beach and St. Augustine.
Well, we got some
I
listeners
got a
out
place
there.
in St. Augustine. I love St. Augustine, man. It's
Yeah,
fun.
that's next weekend. But this weekend, Porky's.
Porky's. Go to
Mitch
Porky's.
Silver.
Well,
Mitch
Mitch
just
is
saying
here.
we're going to join us.
And
Mitch
Mitch,
Silver,
you said-
local, yokel.
Promo code to Tom and Dan.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, $5 off. Use promo code Tom and Dan.
Well, damn.
When you buy tickets, Porky'sComedyClub.com.
There you go.
It's in St. Cloud. Go see Marc Price. He's going to be there the 28th and 29th. Thanks, Mark. You're welcome
appreciate
anytime.
the
I
play
played a
man.
nerd on TV. Mitch is the real thing.
Yeah,
And good genes because he looks exactly the way he did on the TV show.
I know.
That's crazy.
I
I do not look the same.
Well, we've aged.
Oh, well, a lot of bad living.
Yeah,
Bad living.
it is bad living.
We'll take a break. We'll come back with more corporate time right after this.